Hello, friends. I'd like to share a passage from Swami Kriyananda's book, Living Wisely, Living Well. This went by a few days ago. And it's got a song connected with it, as you'll hear in the reading, that is particularly beautiful. And I'll share a few thoughts after reading this passage. But it's relevant, I think, to all of us in these days and in our lives developing spiritually. This is from March 18th in the book Living Wisely, Living Well. And Swami says, "In addressing those who have spoken against you, say to them, 'Thank you. You've helped me to affirm that which alone is real to me, the joy of my own being.' A, quote, friend once spent more than 1 hour coldly denouncing me for all the faults he had perceived in me. They seemed in some way to disturb his peace of mind. I listened in silence, then thanked him. There was nothing more to be said. After his departure, however, I wrote what I think of as one of my best songs, the lyrics of which go, 'Though green summer fade and winter draw near, my Lord, in your presence I live without fear. Through tempest, through snows, through turbulent tide, the touch of your hand is my strength and my guide. I ask for no riches that death can destroy. I crave only thee, your love and your joy. The dancers will pass, the singing must end. I welcome the darkness with you for my friend.' For this song I am forever grateful to my self-styled enemy and ill-wisher." And I would add that all of us who have appreciated that song are grateful as well. Grateful to Swamiji, but also in an odd sort of way, grateful to that soul for inspiring it in Swamiji. And I'd like to just unpack this a little bit by saying, you know, there are a lot of interesting aspects to this story, not the least of which is that it took more than an hour for this self-styled friend or ill-wisher or enemy, however you want to call him, to express all the things he thought were wrong with Swami. And that Swami listened to this guy for more than an hour. I mean, that is impressive in its way. It's impressive that the guy could come up with that much stuff and have that much energy behind it, that it took him that long to sort of get it all out. I mean, it's just kind of astonishing, especially as a monologue. I mean, you know, if you have something to get off your chest to somebody, typically, at least in my own experience, the nub of the thing is like, you know, 1 minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes maximum. I mean, that's a long monologue, 10 minutes. To go on for more than an hour is just, wow. But anyway, evidently this guy felt like he needed to do it, and Swami felt like he needed to listen to it, and he did listen to it. Thanked him, and then he said in a different place, not in this reading, but in speaking about the song, he said he just walked straight to the piano. He lived in a dome at the time, and it was mostly one large open space, domes being the sort of structures that it's not easy to build, interior partitions that are soundproof and go all the way up. Anyway, he walked straight over to the piano and began playing this song, and, you know, it flowed from there. And to have that kind of response, I think, is very indicative of the nature of Swami Kriyananda, that he, whatever came in life, whether it was a blessing attractively packaged, or whether it was something, in this case, that came unexpectedly and unattractively, shall we say, he took it and gave it to God, and took whatever God gave him, and this was the response that God gave him, was to make something beautiful out of something quite ugly and quite difficult, I think, for most people. I would venture to say that most people in this world, if they were to get blasted with something like that, 1/100th of what Swami took, let alone 1/10 or 1/5 or half or all of it, they would be knocked for a real loop. I mean, I knew this guy, and he had a lot of energy. It was a very odd kind of energy, but when directed, he could be quite focused and very unusual. So very unusual that Swami would do that. Actually, in his case, it wasn't unusual. It was his natural response to life, but very unusual for a human being, a normal human being, to bring such an amazingly positive response to something. But just to touch back on the reading, Swami says, they seemed in some way to disturb his peace, speaking of whatever perceived faults he saw in Swami Kriyananda. They seemed in some way to disturb his peace. Now, underneath that is something that Swami does not say overtly, but I will say, which is that you can't see that many faults in somebody else without having some of them yourself. You cannot build up that much of a charge around something without owning some of it in your own being. And to have it disturb your peace of mind to the degree that you have to spend that much energy sort of shooting it at somebody as if, now I have spoken, go fix your life. It's just, it's sort of breathtaking. So that's instructive, that we learn to look within ourselves. But the other part of this is, think of the song, think of the name of the song, I Live Without Fear. And the beginning of the words, up though green summer fade and winter draw near, my Lord, in your presence, I live without fear. And that is, in fact, how Swami lived. Whatever the circumstances of his life, he had many, many beautiful experiences. As a young child, he had a very charmed existence, a reasonably wealthy family, a very international life, learning lots of languages, traveling through Europe, traveling through America. Many positive, lovely aspects to his childhood, and then a lot of difficulty returning to this country, the USA, as a foreigner. Never mind that he was a Native American, but because he had been overseas, he had what the American boys at the time deemed a foreign accent, an English accent, and in any case, he had been away, so as far as they were concerned, he was a foreigner, never mind that he was of American parents. But so he had a lot of he had physical challenges. He was removed from his family for many years as a child, starting at the age of 9 because of illness. He was in a boarding school, a long distance from his family. And those things really forged a soul that could look within and could go beyond the assumptions that people make, the assumptions that if something difficult comes to me, therefore it's bad. Therefore, I must suffer, I must have pain inside. Of course he felt pain, but he didn't identify with pain. And of course he felt challenged. If somebody's going to denounce you for an hour, it could really shake your ego. It could shake your sense of stability, the sense of who am I and what is my worth. And it could bring about anger, it could bring about fear. Those two are intimately interconnected, intimately intertwined. And so he goes to the piano, he writes, I live without fear. And he lived, I live without fear. May we all do likewise. Namaste.